Hi, this is Carol Ford. This is a very special episode because in this episode, Linda Groundwater and I are celebrating Bob Crane's birthday.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Born on Friday, July 13th, 1928, Bob always claimed throughout his life that 13 was his lucky number. No triskaidekaphobia here. This is a lighter conversation compared to some of our more serious episodes. Today, Linda and I talk about Bob's birthday, his upbringing in Connecticut, his family and school friends, his inspiration for learning the drums, and some influential experiences from his childhood that shaped who he became as an adult. We now invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is Flipside, the true story of Bob Crane. Hi everyone, this is Carol Ford.
Hey everyone, it's Linda Groundwater.
And today Linda and I want to wish everyone a happy Enarch Week.
Happy Enarch Week to you.
And I bet everybody's going, what in the heck is Enarch Week? Today, that might take on a really different meaning. When Enarch Week was, shall we say, invented, I guess? Back in the early 1950s, Bob Crane invented that name because it was the week of his birthday. When he was at WICC, he made the whole week a special week, and he called it Enarch Week, and it's Crane spelled backwards. Linda, what would you be if you were spelled backwards?
Mine requires a little more work. Mine would be Rit Odnorg Week.
Wait, say that again?
It's Rit Odnorg. And as it also happens to be your birthday week, Happy Droff Week.
My birthday is the 14th, the day after Bob. So thanks, Linda. So it's Enarch
Week. Happy Droff Week.
And Droff Week. Well, Droff Week just doesn't have the ring.
And our Droff Week.
I won't be using that for any passcodes, if anybody's wondering. So yeah, this is Bob's birthday week. His birthday is July 13th. He was born on Friday the 13th in Waterbury, Connecticut in 1928, making him 93 this year if he had lived. 93. So this is a special birthday episode that we're going to just talk a little bit about Bob's early life growing up in Connecticut.
We do need to point out, as it was Friday the 13th, that Bob would say that Friday the 13th was lucky for him. So the point of this podcast is really just to draw attention to the fact that although we do talk about a lot of serious things about Bob, the more in-depth and psychological and whatever bits of Bob, that he was just a guy like everyone else was or is. He had a birthday like everyone else did, and he had a childhood like everyone else did, and he had people around him who loved him for his whole life. And to just draw attention to some of those smaller, detailed, positive things that often get left out when you're discussing someone's broader life, because let's face it, in the grand scheme of things, when people talk about Bob's life, they don't discuss him bottles going to school. They discuss drumming and Hogan's Heroes and KNX and Beginner's Luck and his murder and his acting and his radio, and they don't say, well, Bottles used to pick up stuff by the river.
And for people who are wondering, Bottles was Bob's nickname in school. When he would go and hang out with his childhood friends over by the creek, Bob's school friend, Neil McGinnis, told us, and he would throw the bottles in the creek and he would try and get them to bob up and down in the water. His childhood nickname became Bottles. When I met Neil McGinnis in California when I was there on business, to him, it was just Bottles. That's what he called Bob.
Neil McGinnis, people who've read the book will see, he was corny.
Yes. Yes, corny, because his
Neil was corny.
His middle name was Cornelius. Yes.
Yep. The memory is that the kids would go play along by the river because Bob lived down by the river on the east side of Glenbrook, Connecticut. The kids would reach Bob's house, and Bob always had a pile of bottles.
They'd ride their bikes down to the river.
Yeah. And they would throw the bottles in and then throw stones and try to break the bottles as they bobbed away. And so they bobbed away. And so they started calling him Bottles. And Neil actually said that for some people, they called Bob that all through high school. He was just Bottles.
Bottles. Yeah. There's your trivia for the week. Bob's nickname in school was Bottles. So brain. Bob had he had a normal childhood. We talk about, we're going to talk about something positive and so on and so forth. And yes, this is positive, but it's also normal. Maybe normal's not the right word, but we have average day-to-day life. Typical. Yeah. Bob had parents. Al was his father. Rosemary was his mother. He had an older brother, Al Jr., that they called him. They grew up primarily, even though Bob was born in Waterbury, they moved to Stamford very shortly thereafter, after his birth. And Bob primarily grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. He was a Stamford boy. He had typical growing up years as a young boy in the 1930s, 1940s. When they would walk to school, he used to teach the other kids the songs. He would sing songs as he walked to school with his friends. And his friends told us that that's where they learned a lot of the songs, because Bob would be singing them when he first heard them. And they'd say, Bob, where'd you hear that? Oh, that's so-and-so, such by such and such. He was very upbeat. He was very happy. He was always smiling. I love the pictures of him from when he's little. He's always got those, just like you see when he's older in Hogan's Heroes, he's got those big sparkly eyes and the big wide smile, and he looks a little mischievous. He grows up with his family in a very strong Irish Catholic household. Family was very important.
Russian Irish,
yes.
It's just really strong ethnicities.
Yes.
I mean, and 6 uncles. Big family, close family, always spent weekends at the cousins. And the other thing we have to remember, too, is that the era in which Bob grew up is very different, of course, from the way kids grow up now. But, when Bob was in school, the war was on. And we're talking World War II. This was an active war. His brother was in active service. A lot of kids were in active service. They were going to graduate classes early so that they could go off and fight the war. And Bob's class was one of those that they were going to do that to. Thankfully, it ended.
When they were doing calisthenics, they weren't doing like today, kids go and they play volleyball and baseball and basketball and gym. When Bob was in high school, they were doing early basic training. They were doing calisthenics. They were running outside in the winter in nothing but t-shirt and shorts. So they were trying to toughen these kids up and getting them ready to go off to war and graduate them early. And it was not the gym classes that we have now, or even when we were in school, Linda. It was not, let's just go shoot basketball, or let's just go play baseball or softball or volleyball.
There was an undercurrent. There was a great undercurrent at that time. Bob was 11 years old when the war started. 11. And that undercurrent carried all through high school. Same thing, of course, for Anne, the same thing for all of Bob's friends. His own brother had to serve. There were families who had the flags in the windows. And that is an undercurrent that I think for the most part, our generation has not had to deal with. Certainly not that way. The big war when you and I were growing up was Vietnam, and that was in and out. And
Vietnam was different, and not to get into politics about war, but Vietnam, that was a whole era of, we don't want our soldiers there and your baby killers. And in World War II, it was the whole world. Growing up in World War II, there was rationing. Bob's friends talked about how, they were only allowed so much butter and so much sugar. Rationing? We don't ration. My goodness. Look at the great toilet paper catastrophe of 2020. Yeah, imagine trying to only live on a half a stick of butter every 2 weeks, or a half a cup of milk. Meat was rationed, like daily food was rationed. In Stamford, Bob's father and other men in the town would go up to Stamford High School, go up to other buildings, and they'd go up on the roof at night. All of the town would close their windows, draw their drapes, turn out the lights, be very dark. And they'd go up to the school and to other buildings. They'd go up to the roof and they would watch. They would watch for enemy planes. Think about that. Tonight, when we go to bed, we might be bombed. And so the men of the neighborhood are going to go up to the rooftops and watch for the enemy to come in and bomb us, so that if they can see them early enough, we can get our Air Force in the air more quickly and prevent it from happening. That's just horrific. You have things going on in London. You've got the Blitz. You've got all of those things happening. It's just a whole different world. Bob's brother served in the Navy. It was in August 1943, so Bob was 15. That's when Al Jr. joined the Navy. And then on August 11th, 1944, he reported for duty on the USS Bunker Hill. In May 1945, while Al was serving on the Bunker Hill was attacked by 2 kamikaze planes, and the ship was badly damaged. Many of the Navy sailors were killed. Al had just been relieved of his post at the radio. He was a radio man on the ship. And had he still been at his post, he would have died, because the sailor who replaced him died. And he was stuck in the burning hull of the ship. And remember, Jim Senich told us this story in very vivid detail.
Yep.
About how Al Jr. climbed up out of the burning hull on a red hot chain, got 3rd-degree burns all over his arms and body, and was very badly wounded. When news of this attack happened, again, it's not like today where we know things instantaneously and we've got advanced communication systems. In 1945, they didn't have that. So it was weeks before Bob and his parents knew whether or not Al had been killed in that attack. And Bob's friend Charlie Zito said that Bob would go over to his house and they would play music. Bob would play his drums and Charlie played piano, and they would kind of just tinker around with some music. And Charlie didn't like to ask Bob about that because it would bring Bob to tears.
Well, he didn't want to talk about it. He got out of his house to go to Charlie's because it was just so hard to cope with all the time. And when you think about all the things that were happening at that time, like VE Day on the 8th of May, the ship got hit on the 11th. And the boys, Charlie and Bob and probably Don Sapern and their other friends, were supposed to report the following week. I think it was around the 20th of May. They were all supposed to report for duty. Typical family things for that era. We could discuss the whole psychological thing of the war and all that on the family, but really this podcast isn't really for that. But it's just that idea that families went through these things. Bob's family was like every other family. They were not exempt from all these things. They did grow up with that whole different undercurrent in their lives. And to watch Bob grow up into a young man who continued to have a positive, happy outlook on life comes from a background of playing with bottles, playing drums, go playing music, meeting your girlfriend out on the baseball field, and that undercurrent of a country that united in war. And that's nothing special. And that's not to put down anything about Bob. That is to say that he was a product of his time. He was so lucky that he managed to escape what his brother did not, because his brother, of course, was very badly affected by all of that for the rest of his life. His brother did feel guilt, enormous guilt. Huge.
The guy who replaces you is killed. You were just sitting in that seat. He went through life saying, it should have been me. It should have been me. Bob persevered. He always tried to look on the optimistic side, on the bright side. There's always a pony hidden in the room. It starts young. It starts with his early childhood and perseverance during difficult times. Now, everybody knows Bob's a drummer. Loves his drums. Drumsticks go everywhere. We've talked about him tapping his drumsticks on everything from lockers to chairs. He was Stamford's drummer boy. That had its start when Bob was very young, too. In 1939, the World's Fair was in Flushing, New York. Gene Krupa was playing. The Cranes went to the World's Fair, and it was at the World's Fair where Bob saw Gene Krupa play live. And from that moment on, he was hooked. Now, if a newspaper story is to be believed, Bob got his first drum a few months before the World's Fair in 1938 at Christmas time. And Linda, since you can pronounce this gentleman's name way better than I can, I'm going to let you go with this one.
So when Bob was 10 years old, according to this article, his very first drum was a Christmas gift from his father. His dad went to get a snare drum at a local store in Stamford. It was $23. And when you think about what things cost in those days, that was a lot of money. He asked the store's owner, and the store owner was Vito Shigliampaglia, to hold that drum for him until Christmas. Now, by sheer accident, that drum was sold to someone else by mistake. Bob's father, Al Sr., was furious. He paid for the drum, and it was just supposed to be held. But once it's gone, it's gone. And it's not like you can go find whoever you sold it to and get it back. So instead, according to this story, Al Sr. just swiped another drum off the shelf and said, "This one will do in its place, thank you," and took off. And that drum was a $75 drum, which in today's dollars was something around the line of, say, $1,200. So in those days, the one that he had picked out for his son was probably still around the $400 mark, which is a lot of money for a family that didn't have a lot of money, considering, that they'd come out of the Depression and they'd moved around for work and whatnot. And according to the article, and I love this quote, and this is where I think the article just kind of goes a little over the top.
Maybe a little tall tale from Bob again.
A little bit of a tall tale, where he says, "I promised my boy a drum for Christmas, and by the holy saints of Ireland, he's going to have one." But later on, when Bob became famous and well known across the country, of course, Shigliampaglia had a photo of Bob as Colonel Hogan in a prominent place in his store. And on the image were the words written, "I, Vito Shigliampaglia, am responsible for the show business career of Bob Crane of TV, radio, and movies." And I do believe that. But I don't know about the "by the saints of Ireland, he's going to have one." I didn't know. It's a great story.
It's a great story. I really do hope it's true.
I do too. And and the thing is, you hear stories like that and you go, hang on. It speaks to the very dual-sided nature of Bob's dad, in that if this is true and he desperately wanted him to have the drum, Bob's friends have said that his parents didn't worry about him playing the drums. They thought it was a pipe dream that Bob would become a famous drummer as an adult, but said, look, if it makes him happy to play the drums, let him play the drums. So, off you go. And if anything happens, he does have other talents and will be fine. Whereas this is the same father who was upset about Bob not accepting the Stamford jewelry store inheritance, so to speak. However, when he did become successful in what he was doing, it was the same father who then went, "That's my son.
That's my boy.
That's
my son."
But a lot of, and the thing is, a lot of families are like that too. So it's not that it was a particularly unusual thing. There's often contradiction in the way a parent looks at things. My son acts, and I always encouraged that. But if he wanted to do something else, you do something else. As long as he's happy doing this or happy doing that, then that's what you want for your kids. But you try not to encourage those things that, they thought, well, he's never going to be a drummer. We're not going to encourage that. But at the same time, when it helped him, it was, look, my son, the drummer. My son, the actor, my son, because Al did love his kids. And one of the things I talked about in the autopsy show was that Bob's household was quite strict, and there could be some very tense times in that household. But again, the time period you're in, the ethnicity that they're dealing with, the family background and ethnic background in those times, it's nothing unusual. It's just absolutely ordinary stuff.
Yep.
And by the saints of Ireland, they're going to go to church every weekend. I've been taken to the church that Bob went to every weekend.
Me too.
When he went to see his grandmother and whatnot. There were strict rules in the family. And of course, that's what there was in those days. Certainly a lot more than a lot of families do now. And I know I was always accused of being a very strict parent. Not accused as much as, wow, you don't let your kid do this, or wow, because that's how we grow up. The strong ethnic backgrounds, the strong religious backgrounds, that's what you did. But it wasn't unusual. And Bob was just a kid like any other kid and grew up and did some pretty amazing things. And we're all the beneficiaries of those wonderful things that he did.
Absolutely true. So this isn't a short episode. It's a quick episode to say Happy Enoch Week. Happy birthday, Bob Crane.
Happy Droff Week.
And
Everyone
come
say
October.
Happy birthday to Carol. It's Droff Week.
Come October, when Linda's birthday comes around, we can say happy.
Go on. Red
Aw.
Odnewarg.
There you go. We had a lot of big words. Did we say triskaidekaphobia?
We didn't. We should have a quiz and say, what is the fear of the number 13?
Well, I think we should have a quiz and say, what are the 3 big words that we said in this episode that are really hard to pronounce?
And who can spell Shigley and Paglia?
That's a tough one. Got to read the book for that one.
Yeah.
All right. So happy birthday, Bob.
Happy birthday to Bob. And thank you, Bob, for all the wonderful things that you've given us and all the fantastic stories that came from family and friends and the opportunity to celebrate the good things about Bob at this time of year.
Have a great week, everybody. Happy Enoch Week, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care. See you next time.
Flipside, the true story of Bob Crane, is owned and produced by Carol M. Ford Productions and is based on Bob Crane, the definitive biography. All rights reserved. No portion of this podcast may be used without written permission. For archived episodes of this podcast and more information about Bob Crane, visit voteforbobcrane.org. That's vote, the number 4, bobcrane.org. You can also subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, our hosting site Spreaker, and everywhere podcasts are found.